Hi, it's Nicole, and today I'm doing the Read Soul Lit tag. This tag was made by Didi from Brown Girl Reading, and I was tagged by Doris from Aldi Books. So, hi. This is going to be a little bit rough and ready because I just realized while editing that I actually missed out 2 questions because I wanted to come back to them, and then I never came back to them, so it's just like big gaps in the video. So it's going to be a little bit choppy, and I'm going to put in now what I should have put in then when I originally recorded this, like last week or something. Noir n'est pas mon métier, which is kind of translated as Black is not my job, is a book that I've been looking forward to reading for a little while now. It's an anthology by different French actresses talking about their experience in the French acting world and being pigeonholed as like the Black person, specifically the Black woman, in different films where that is the role that they're meant to fill and that's it, rather than just an interesting character that they as a person are able to play. I think this is really interesting as well because the title, for me at least, feels like it works in different levels as well, because the idea of Black not being your career is also kind of touching on this idea of it not actually being something that you choose, but something that other people decide to focus on, and that determines what you can kind of do and where you can go in a lot of ways. So I'm really interested in reading that. Also interested in reading it because language plays a really interesting role with any kind of racial things. I think this is true for a few European languages, but I know that in French talking about race is kind of awkward because in a lot of ways you kind of can't. Just because, for example, the word itself, race, exists in French, and the way that it's used in English has been borrowed from English, and it's kind of used sometimes in French, but it's also much more insulting in French because it generally, as far as I can tell, is used mainly to talk about animals. It's more like a breed or like practically like being a different species kind of thing. So I think generally speaking, I've found that people tend to avoid using the word race, and they'll tend to sometimes even avoid saying Black and instead say a person with darker skin, and I find that really interesting in itself. And this is only something that I've recently started to notice, and maybe I am off with the way that I've interpreted that, but I think that is true. But there's also a really interesting video from Emmy. It's in French, but I think it's been subtitled, so I'll leave that down below. And she talks about how the word race plays into the French language, and she also has input from Black people, because she's not Black, but she has input from Black French people talking about this, how they feel about it, and obviously loads of different people are going to feel different ways about it because everyone's different. So that's a really interesting dialogue to me, but it also just seems to have a really interesting group of women in this anthology, and I'm curious to hear what they have to say about their experiences in the French acting world. And I'll try to make all the rest of the answers not be quite so long as that one. I don't actually have any books that I've read and loved that quite fit the time of pre-1970. Most of the books that I really liked are just after that or fully in the 1990s or 2000s. So I decided to answer this question with some classic Read Soul Lit books that I'm really excited about getting to. James Baldwin is obviously definitely on my radar. I haven't read any of his narrative work, but I've heard so many good things about his writing. Then there's Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man, which a friend of mine actually gave to me recently, and it's been on my list for a little while, but I think I'm going to get to it a bit faster now that I actually have the physical book. And then the last one is actually a book that I want to read in French, Discours sur le colonialisme. I think there might be an English translation, Discourse on Colonialism or something like that, by Aimé Césaire. And like I said, I'd like to read that one in the original French, partly because I'm trying to do like French February. I think My Name is Leon by Kit Duwall would make a really good film. Sweet but not over the top, and with a really authentic voice, and just really heart-wrenching. And it sort of feels like it's already well packaged to be a film. This is actually quite hard for me, and I have been aware of this for a little while. And I think it's interesting that when I started being more aware of trying to diversify my books, there were certain groups that I definitely leaned one way or another in terms of gender. So I've managed to even that out with Asian authors. So now I pretty much read fairly evenly male and female authors. But for example, with Hispanic authors or Middle Eastern authors, I tend to lean male. And I wonder if that's just because male tends to be the default in a way. And so those are often, at least when I'm looking for things, I guess that those are often the bigger names that stand out. And I'm just looking to break into that literature group. So at the start it tends to lean male. But for whatever reason, probably because I relate to this group in an intimate way, for Black authors I tend to lean very, very heavily towards the female experience. I can think of a lot of psychological reasons why that might be, and there are actually a lot of Black male authors that are on my TBR, but I tend to pick up the female authors first. But last year I read a few of those Slim Penguin modern classics, and a lot of them were from Black male authors, and I really liked those because they were a good taster for like which ones I might want to pick up more works by. And one of those people who stood out was Chinua Achebe. I've actually already read Things Fall Apart, and I was sort of okay with that one. It didn't make a huge impression on me at the time, and then afterwards I read up a little bit more about it, and my appreciation for that one grew quite a lot. And then I read Africa's Tarnished Name, which was the Penguin Modern Classic, and I loved it. It was really, really spot on, super interesting analysis of Heart of Darkness, and he really nailed a lot of how I was feeling about it, and I just felt really unsure about whether I should or could fairly say the things that I was feeling, because with that book it feels like it's just so praised, and the other aspects of it, at least to me, felt like they were sort of ignored, and then I thought, oh, maybe it's just me being too sensitive or something, I don't know. So that was really validating to read his thoughts about that, and he said what he had to say very strongly, and certainly there was no like mistake about what he was saying. So I really liked that. And I also really liked Dark Days by James Baldwin, and that book made me think I really need to pick up more James Baldwin, and I will be doing that. I don't read a lot of new releases. I don't know if anyone's realised that. However, I am interested in Thick and Other Essays by Tressie McMillan Cottom. This already has a lot of high praise, and I've seen it in my periphery for a little while now, and it sounds like the collection might be something that I would really appreciate, so it's as simple as that. And I still don't really have an answer for a new Toni Morrison-esque queen of soul lit, so I'm just gonna quietly back out of that one and just read more and think about that one a bit more. For an African American, I'm going to say Our Prison's Obsolete by Angela Y. Davis, but I also have two other books from Black people who are not American, but they were really good, and I've read both of these books more recently than Our Prison's Obsolete, which, by the way, I loved. Those two non-Americans are Jamaica Kincaid, who wrote A Small Place, and I really liked that and related to it a lot as a fellow native of the Caribbean. Then there was my first read of 2018, which made a huge impression on me and put Rennie Edo-Lodge on my radar, and that is Why I'm No Longer Speaking to White People About Race. Again, she's not American, but I think she's definitely a voice to listen to. Margaret Aboue's Aya series, as well as her Akissi series, they're both illustrated by Clément Houpreri, and they are really, really fun. Houpreri is not Black, but Margaret Aboué is. And on the reverse of that, I have Josephine by Patricia Ruby Powell, illustrated by Christian Robinson, and Christian Robinson is Black. Patricia Ruby Powell is not. They're all really beautiful books, and I would recommend picking up all of them. I have been literally for years wanting to pick up Redefining Realness by Janet Mock, and I haven't. When I'm just buying books, it's just not at the forefront of my mind, I guess. I don't know, but I've been wanting to read this for ages, and I really, really need to. And I feel like it would be a super interesting intersection to find out more about. I feel like a lot of the time the narratives that we're used to are just starting to touch on certain intersections, and I'd like to branch out, I guess, to some of the intersections that are a lot less popular. This year I was planning to read only French books for February, to have it be like a French February, and also because in the UK Black History Month, which I think maybe could be called Black Culture Month instead, but anyway, Black History Month is in October. But I was actually already planning on reading Noir n'est pas mon métier, which fits in really well with this, so that's what I'm about to be currently reading. So I'm gonna tag Mionicorn from The Bookish Land, Claire from Claire Reads Books, Matt from MCS Books, Diana in Colour, and I think that's about it. I actually did already film a January wrap-up, but maybe at this point it just makes more sense to wait until February to do my February wrap-up, and then I can just add that footage into that video and have it all be nice and neat. I don't know. I'll see what makes the most sense to me as I'm sat down doing the little editing thing. Hey, it's a little bit noisy outside, but I thought I'd take this time to also welcome everyone who's new to the channel. Thanks to Jen Campbell for giving me a shout out. That was really sweet of her, and she really didn't have to. I haven't been super great at posting recently, just because I'm in the middle of a really big project, which hopefully I'll be able to show, and it is actually book related, illustration and book related, but I won't be able to like say much more on it than that for a good long time, I think, because the schedule's just been reworked out and stuff like that. But I just wanted to say thank you for subscribing, and I hope that we can have a lot of interesting discussions and share a lot of book opinions and things like that, because that's been really fun so far. And it's been now, I think, a year since I've joined BookTube, which is kind of crazy in itself to me, and I'm glad to still be here. So thanks again for subscribing, and I'm gonna try my best to upload more frequently in future. Yeah. Bye.